Hey everyone, today we're going to explore the castle in Scotland that I think has the most Scottish sounding name of all the castles in all the land. It's right in that hill there, I'm not sure if you can see it, it's just about there, and its name is Auchindoun.
Auchindoun.
Auchindoun's got quite a special place in my affections, and I think it's because when I very first started exploring Scotland and I started doing these road trips and adventures and brown sign hunting, as I called it at the time, because brown signs is how tourist attractions and historic things are signified in Scotland, and I think in all of the UK. And when I first started that many years ago, this was one of the first places that I came across, and I didn't know that it existed. I was just following my nose really. I was treasure hunting, just hoping to come across something interesting, and this was one of the very first places that I found. And I remember, I think it was autumn at the time, and there was a chill in the air, and it just kind of suited this castle. Maybe I should have come in autumn actually, because it kind of suits the colder weather. Mind you, it's quite cold today. It's meant to be July. Well, it is July, but you wouldn't know it by the weather. It's a bit windy and rainy today. But anyway, when I first came it was autumn, and it just kind of suited it because it's this really, I think they call it gaunt and imposing, a shattered ruin, and it just kind of suits the sort of the melancholy of autumn. There's me talking about melancholy again. Remember I was saying at that farmhouse that abandoned places give me that melancholic feeling, but I quite like it. Well, this gave me that feeling, but in a good way, if that makes sense. So yeah, I always remember Auchindoun as being one of the first places I ever discovered. I just remember coming across it and nobody else was here, and I remember getting lost in my imagination as I do in places like this and just thinking, this is amazing, I love this. And I was hooked on adventuring around Scotland and trying to find things like these. I'm not sure if you can hear me with all this wind, but let's see if we can see some of the stories associated with Auchindoun. So this is the sign for it. It's run by Historic Scotland, or cared for by Historic Scotland. And it says, this castle is considered to have been built by Thomas Cochrane, architect and favourite of James III, from whom he received the earldom of Mar in 1479. The tower house has been ornate with a great vaulted hall on the first floor. The courtyard wall has been altered, probably by the Gordons, who received the lands in 1535. Now this is the story that everyone associates with Auchindoun Castle. So in previous vlogs I've talked about the way that the Gordons and the Forbeses feuded with one another. Well, this is a Gordon castle, and it says, Sir Adam Gordon of Auchindoun, so the laird of this castle, is still remembered as the perpetrator of the most atrocious deed in the history of Mar, the burning to death of Margaret Campbell, the wife of Forbes of Towie, and 27 of her family and servants at Cairngorth Castle in November 1571. So Cairngorth Castle is over there somewhere, and he went over, he waited until the Laird of Forbes was out, and when he'd gone, he went over and he massacred, and I think he burned Cairngorth Castle as well, and he massacred everyone inside, including his wife and all his servants and I guess family members. So that is considered to be one of the most atrocious deeds in all of the history of the feuding between the Gordons and the Forbeses, but just in the general of clan warfare. One of the most atrocious deeds. And yeah, there's a little sign here that will talk about it a bit further. So this is what the castle looked like back in the day. It would have looked rather nice. We've got the bed chamber upstairs, we've got a gallery here, some more bedrooms down here, and then it says gaunt and imposing and windswept. Yeah, those are the words I always associate with this skeletal, a shattered ruin, words like that. Auchindoun Castle is associated with some of the most notorious deeds of clan feuding. Some of them have been immortalised in folk ballads. So there's one of the ballads there, which I won't read out, but you can maybe pause it and read it if you want. And then there's a timeline down here. So it was built in the 1470s. It says the castle was built then. It was built for the Ogilvies, who had it in 1509. It was then sold to Sir Adam Gordon. And then that's when the attack happened in 1571, and then by 1724 it was now derelict, and William Duff of Bracco is granted permission to remove stones for his new house at Balvenie. And it says that the massacre provided inspiration for the ballad Edom o' Gordon, which you can probably Google and find. It says, well, one 16th century commentator condemned Sir Adam as the Herod of the North. It's a brutal time, but now all that's left, as you can see, is this ruin here. And yeah, it's just got this really kind of isolated kind of feel to it, a kind of melancholic feel about it. Like I said, whenever I'm here, I've never seen anybody else here, which kind of adds to that sense of it being a lonely, wild place. And as you look out, all there is moorland. As far as the eye can see, just hills. As you can see, they've been doing a bit of work on it just here to kind of stabilise it. But there's nothing for miles and miles around. You can just imagine them heading off over the hills to Auchindoun Castle to do their heinous deed. There's also a bit down here which we'll go down and have a look at. I'm not sure what this is. I think in my head I have it down as like a secret escape tunnel. No, I don't think that is a secret escape tunnel. It looks like some kind of like for the latrines, maybe some kind of waste pipe. And if it is, then that's something that's very advanced for the time, considering it was built in the 1400s. But I'm not sure what that is. So yeah, Auchindoun Castle, the most Scottish sounding castle in all of Scotland. Auchindoun. Okay, because that was quite a quick one, I think we're going to go into Duftton, which is quite close to here. It's a little village about a mile away, and we're going to see a couple of things around there. There's one place in particular that I'm thinking of. It's a fairy wood, which I remember visiting years ago, and also it's got something called the Giant's Chair, which is not that impressive as far as I remember, but the fairy wood's quite cool. I was actually going to leave Duftton for another time, and we were going to have this whole tour of the village, because that's where Glenfiddich distillery is as well, and there's another castle there as well, Balvenie Castle, so there's quite a few things around Duftton, and I was going to leave that for its own separate vlog. However, because the dogs haven't had quite a long enough walk yet, we're going to go and we'll see the fairy wood. So yeah, that's the plan. Let's head off there now. Oh, I think this is the Giant's Chair over here, which again, to be honest with you, as far as I remember, isn't that impressive. I think I said that before. Yeah, so this is called the Giant's Cradle. Ah, I get it now, because it's a giant hole for a giant baby. I always wondered why it was called the Giant's Cradle, but there we go, there's a giant baby shaped hole in there with a peaceful river flowing by. And this is the sign for the Giant's Chair. The name Giant's Chair comes from the seat-shaped rock formation, and the giant of the Giant's Chair is said to be Malcolm II, King of Scots from 1005 to 1035. From here he overlooked the Danish army's camp set up before a battle on this site in 1010. It is said that here the river had been dammed up with bull's hides until the water had accumulated in sufficient quantity to be let loose with great force upon the enemy encamped upon the hoe below the church. Really? I did not know this. And there's the sign for the Giant's Chair just there. So this is it, we're standing on it. So as I said before, it's not that impressive really, but I didn't know that about the fact that they dammed up the river because the Danish, the Vikings, were further downriver, so they dammed it up until there was a lot of water here, then they let it go and it gushed down on top of the Danes, the Vikings. Did not know that, that's really clever though. Anyway, on we go to the fairy village. To be honest, it's not as good as I remember. There used to be a house here which I've just seen, but it's all been scrapped. There used to be a little house that you could actually go inside. I think perhaps what's happened is he built this and then he hasn't done much to it afterwards, and then it's just been damaged over the years, and now it's a bit overgrown and there's not much there anymore. But anyway, it's still a good walk, eh? It's still good for walks. Okay, Duftton is down in that direction, but we're not going to go all the way into town today. We're going to turn back and head to the car because we're going to do Duftton another day. There's a lot of things to see there. But on the way back, we're going to see Duffton Distillery, which is where they make the Singleton, which again, I've never tried. So I don't know if it's any good or not, but I do think Speyside whiskies are the best in my personal opinion. There it is through the trees. It says Duffton Distillery. And one thing you'll notice about the trees around distilleries is that it turns all the trees black. Let me just show you on this tree over here. See how it's turned black? It's a type of fungus that thrives on the ethanol that gets released during the aging process, because the whiskey sits in these barrels for about 10, 12, 15, 18, 20 plus years, and while it's in there some escapes. It's called the angel share, and as it escapes it kind of circulates in the air. You can often smell it in the air actually, and yeah, it causes a type of fungus, black fungus, to grow on the trees, and it's called whiskey fungus. There's just one more thing I'm going to check before I go home, because I've never been in here before, but I've passed it. It's called Mortly Church. I'm just going to check if we can get inside. I don't think we can, but it's always worth just having a little rattle of the doorknob just to make sure. A very scenic place for a church. It was established, it says, in 566. So there's been something here for 1500 years. Wow, that's an old church. Of course, it won't be this building, it'll be a previous building, but still, that's an old church. Let me just check what it says here. So it says that this church is one of the oldest in Scotland. The oldest part dates to when Malcolm II, King of Scots, defeated the Dane army in 1010. So that's what we were reading about up at the Giant's Chair. So the water trick worked. The damming it up and then unleashing it, that was a good plan, it worked. And they defeated the Dane army in 1010. The first clashes of the battle occurred between Mortly Church and what is now Mortly Distillery. The Danes, emboldened by their strength, attacked quickly and with speed. The Scots, seeing that a full ground attack was imminent, fled along the Black Water and up the course of the Dullin, which is the river we've just been walking past, or alongside. Malcolm was able to stop the retreat at the monastery dedicated to St. Molchus, or St. Moluag, and gathered his remaining forces. It is said that he kneeled in the graveyard of the church and prayed for the help of God in St. Moluag. The monks saw that Malcolm was a good Christian, and with Malcolm's promise to enlarge their church by 3 spear lengths, they joined Malcolm's forces and defeated the Danes. So the monks got involved. So there was some kind of Christian establishment here, and the monks got involved in that battle and defeated the Danes, and as a result of that the church was expanded, and some of the original church apparently is still here. Is that what we just read on the sign? Some of the original church, going back to 566, that can't be right, is still here. I can't take long here because I've left the dogs in the car. But, wow. So one of the oldest churches in Scotland. It doesn't look that old. I imagine it's been extensively kind of rebuilt or refurbished. But apparently some of it is still original, which is pretty crazy to think. 566, that's maybe the oldest thing I've ever found. There's a sign down there. Okay, so yeah, it's just about the Pictish stone. I'll just read a bit of this. It says, a very old local tradition held that the Mortly battle stone commemorated the famous victory of Malcolm II over the Danes under their general Sweyn on the site in 1010. So they established the stone to commemorate the defeat of the Danes. I can't see anything on that side really. I can see a cross on this side. It's gotten very faint over the years, but it would do, being over 1,000 years old. Maybe you can make out the cross just here. I'm surprised with this being a burial site. Obviously they do a lot of digging with all these gravestones. I'd be very surprised if they haven't found lots of kind of swords and knives and jewellery and brooches and things like that. Okay, so this sign says that this gate depicts the Battle of Mortly, which took place on the ground below the church in the year 1010. King Malcolm II fought the Danes near the monastery of Mortly and the Dillon water, which separated the two armies. Oops, sorry, I'm not keeping the camera where it should be. It says, catching sight of the assembled Danes, the Scots attacked from the south with more haste than sense. 3 of the Scots leaders were killed, and in the confusion they fell back a little. At this critical moment, King Malcolm fell to his knees facing the chapel and prayed to God in St. Moluag, the founder of the chapel, for victory. In return, he vowed to build a cathedral church on the site of the chapel to testify with God's support Scotland had been defended. The Vikings started to retreat following a further attack by the Scots, who pursued the enemy eastwards towards where Auchindoun Castle now stands, and a great victory was achieved. King Malcolm, true to his word, extended the building by 3 spear lengths, or about 12 metres. The battle stone, which was erected to commemorate the battle, still stands in the lower part of the graveyard, which is what we just saw. The stone and its inscription is depicted in the design of the gate, as is the 3 spears and the crown. Okay, so that's what it actually looks like. I could only make out the cross, but there's some other things in there as well, and some 3 spears. Very good. I like that. Hey pup, you didn't like that. That was boring. Oh no, not reading signs. Not reading signs. You did not enjoy a sign read. That's the worst. It's not as good as sniffs anyway. Nothing's as good as a good sniff.